didn't bend a knee nor a finger, and didn't lift their head. And the old king got so mad. They usually burn people up when they violate the laws of the king. He said, go down there and turn the furnace up and get her 7 times hotter than you usually get it. Them defying young'uns, I'll get rid of them. And they got it heated up 7 times hotter than it'd been. Bound them with ropes. Stood there and chunked them in like chunking in cordwood. Flames rushed out and burnt the ones that threw them in to death. Left nothing but their ashes. That's why the old king went down. Hey, how many did they throw in there? 3. What? I see 4 in there now. And one of them's the Lord. He's still in the boat where his young'uns are. Come on out, boys. No singed hair had a smell and committed a smell of them, and all it burnt off of them was what the world tied on them. Nothing God had put on them got burned off and won't get burned off. I'm standing there where the Lord is. Storms his own, seducing spirits, doctrines of devil, hell raising, hell fighting against the church. But I'm standing in where the Lord is. He brought them through the fire furnace. He brought them through the storm. And he'll bring his church through all the hell forces. Victorious. David wouldn't eat the king's meat, nor drink the king's wine, nor dance at the king's dance. And they said, put that little religious defiant fella in and feed him to the lions. Daniel, you gonna quit praying and being religious? Nope. Got out and prayed again. They said, feed him. Got down there and got down and hear those chains unlocking those gates, and those gates are clicking. Said, Daniel, you gonna keep? Sure am. Gonna live for God. Here you go. Opened that gate and shoved him in. All those old lions had run back in there. Got crouched down to get him when he hit the floor. God locked their jaws and their claws. Daniel pushed their whiskers back on their nose and they couldn't even touch it. Used one of them's bushy manes for a pillow that night. And every time those lions would get bloodthirsty and start licking that tongue out and whirling them white eyes at Daniel, start to get up, God's angel says, shh, don't wake him up, let him sleep. Next morning, the king didn't sleep or eat that night. It shook him up. He went down next morning and said, oh, Daniel! Daniel! Somebody hollering, waking me up. Daniel! Said, oh yeah, king, what's wrong? Said, they didn't eat you. Said, no, you just woke me up. Said, how come? Said, the Lord is in here with me. Lord's in the boat, the lions can't eat you. When the Lord's in the boat, the fire can't burn you. When the Lord's in the boat, the storm can't wreck you. Stay in the boat, young'uns. Stay in the boat where the Lord is. You say, well, the lions wasn't hungry. Well, too. So the families of the one that had it planned in there the next morning, ate them all up. They got out of the boat and got to eat up. When you get out of the boat, you're gone. Jesus is in the church. Love the church. Stay in the boat where the Lord is. It may be difficult. It may seem dry and dead and cold and unattractive, but while he's asleep or while he's awake, stay in there where he's at. The victory's in him. He's been victorious over all the foes of humanity. He done conquered it all. Take, for example, Samson, the strongest man that ever walked in shoe leather outside of Jesus. Samson crawled out of the boat, went down to Delilah's house, and as a result got his eyes pulled out, bound him with, and led him away to grind at the enemy's mill for the rest of his life. When you leave your church and quit serving your Lord and following your Lord, young folks, you're fixing to go down to the Delilah's house, and Delilah's crowd will pull your eyes out where you can't see. They'll take away all your freedom and drive you down to the enemy's mill to grind. King David, a man after God's own heart, sitting up on his roof garden, looked at a naked woman bathing and lusted after her, crawled out of the boat to go over to her house and have her to come and commit adultery with him. And he committed adultery. He's out of the boat. And then had to have her husband killed to try to keep him from finding it out, and did a lot of things to cover up. But hear me, he got out of God's boat. You know what happened to David? His son died. Another son got killed in the service. And then he turned to one brother, killed the other brother because a brother had committed adultery with his sister, and the other brother got angry and killed him over it. 4 deaths. And then that is pretty bad. But old David wound up blind, deaf, dumb, eat up with a venereal disease, said had a loathsome disease in his lungs, and he was so sore and corrupted he couldn't even, his friends couldn't come near him. He died in isolation, blind, drawed over, deaf, and dumb. Syphilis eat his eyes out, eat his ear drums out to where he couldn't hear, and eat his vocal cords out to where he couldn't talk, and then bend him over where he had to die out in a disgrace and shame with none of his kinsmen or friends coming near. Go on and jump out of the church and leave the church. But I'll tell you one thing, you'll wind up down there with some venereal disease. God Almighty will punish you. Your eyes will get plugged out. You'll get habited with some sin. Go on and get out of the church and take your dope. It'll blow your brains and wreck your nerves. Go ahead. Go ahead. But don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, there's no security out of the boat.
That's right. Amen.
Jesus is not out there. He's in the boat. And God help you to realize, just think about it. I could call the name of some preachers a lot of you know tonight who are wrecks and disgraced and defeated. Why? They got out of God's boat, went off after women. I could call names. I won't. But I call names of several people. Have you folks here to know the name when I call them? I've seen them get out of the boat and go under. Now I want you young folks to know, you can do the same thing. You get out of the boat and start running with the devil's crowd and with the sex crowd and the doping crowd. You are subject to anything that crowd down there can do to you, and they got plenty they can do to you. Keep it in mind. I want you to know one thing tonight. I had the privilege of seeing one of the most brilliant-minded young folks I've ever seen in my life. Beautiful girl. She had finished high school in 2.5 years and finished the state university in 2 years. She'd been offered $55,000 a year over at the Space Center because of her brilliant mind. She had such a quick, keen mind. Beautiful. I was introduced to her 11 months later. I was back in the same church. And I saw Mom and the Daddy come in leading a young woman. She's grinning like an imbecile. I said to the pastor, "Who's that couple leading that girl?" And I looked and tears were streaming down his cheeks. Said, "You don't know?" I said, "Oh no." Said, "Yeah, you do." Said, "You remember the one you met last year, 11 months ago? They're so brilliant and so beautiful. Said she decided she'd smoke some grass, and it blew her brain, and she's through. They've had her in the best hospitals and clinics all over the world. And all the surgeons and all of the neurologists say everything, the doctors that treat the mind and so on, said she'll never be nothing but an idiot from here on. Just one smoke of grass blowed her brain. Won't blow mine. Who told you that? The devil. He's a murdering liar. Smoke your grass, take your acid, and you'll wind up, my friends, a slave to sin. I was in the state of Kentucky. Man said, would you like to see something you won't ever forget? I said, yes. He carried me down to a building about twice as big as this auditorium. And got a permit and carried me in there. And there's 171 teenagers in there. Walking around, grinning, being silly. And when they got ready to have a discharge from their body, they didn't go to the restrooms, they just used their clothes. Stinkiness, filthiest thing I've ever seen. There they were just walking around and they didn't know where they're at. And I said, sir, who are these? Said, these are they that come out of some of the finest homes in America. Dope did it. Acid did it. Grass did it. And Mr. Ray, they'll never be any better. They'll spend their life in this mess in here. Largest hospital in America. Private-owned hospitals, Baptist Hospital in Memphis. 3 years ago, I went down the hallway of the psychiatric ward. Counted 71 young people, teenagers. And he's lying up against the wall, some lying in the floor, kicking and slobbering like a dog. Some of them beating the wall, hollering, doctor! Oh, doctor, help us! I met an old nurse down the way that I knew, and I said, what's wrong with all them youngsters? She took her handkerchief out and began to wipe the tears. Said, Brother Ray, they're through. They're out of some of the nicest homes in Tennessee, but they've bloated on dope. And no doctor or no medicine will ever cure them. We have them here like that every day. And there's nothing we can do. Got out of the boat. Took a trip out of the boat. Got out of the boat to smoke some grass. Wound up idiots. Got out of the boat to commit sex. Wound up with venereal disease. Mind blown. Nerves shot. Stay in the boat. Stay in the boat. Paul was in a storm in a boat. For 14 days and nights they prayed and fought the storm. And finally the Lord stood by and said, Paul, she's going to wreck. But don't worry. You won't get hurt. Paul said she can break the fast and eat you something. We'll need a little strength that while she's going to wreck. But the Lord said there wasn't nothing going to happen to us. Sure enough, that boat wrecked and tore off to pieces. And they got out. And nobody got hurt. Because the Lord is in the boat and He didn't let it hurt them. Storm didn't bother them. They got wet and it was cold and He built them a fire to warm and dry by, and an old snake run out of that fire and bit Paul, and he just slung it off and kept it warming. You see, when you start building fires, snakes start crawling. But if it bites you, they won't hurt you. You preachers start preaching against sin in your church, and you young folks start living against the devil in your church, that hot fire will get the snakes a crawling, But if they bite you, they won't hurt you. Just string them off and go on. Because the Lord's in there. He's in the boat. And then, my friends, I want you to realize tonight, sure as you get out of the boat, you're going to sink. Storm's going to get you. And I've never known, and I've been here 30 years, and I think my folks will bear me out, I've never heard as many messages warning young people about the dangers as been delivered here this time. And what they're trying to say, stay with the Lord. And God wants me to tell you tonight, as the last message, to stay in the boat. Stay in the boat. Stay in the church. It may seem unattractive and dead and not very lively. You may think the Lord's gone to sleep, but it's better to be in there with Him and Him asleep than it is be out in the world and the devil kill you. Maybe your church is a little dry. Maybe your church does seem a little dead. Maybe it is unattractive. But hey, stay in there. Stay in there. The Lord's in there. He's the head of it. He's the foundation of it. And He said all the forces of hell will never defeat it. Let hell come. Let hell crowd come. Let the devils raise all they want to. The militant forces of hell will rise up and fight and fight and fight, and then they still won't whip it. It shall never suffer defeat. The cross shall never suffer loss. The victory's won. We are more than conquerors through Him that loved us and died. He's already conquered the crowd after you. Stay in the boat. If he seems asleep, stay in the boat. If he's up in there, stay in the boat. But stay in the boat, young ones. Stay in the boat. Stay in your church. Jesus loved it and gave Himself for it. You stay in there and pray and stay with God till a revival comes that'll save us from the storm. Stay in the boat. Don't get out. Stay with your church. Stay in there. He's the head of it. He's the foundation of it. My friends, He said it'll never, never suffer defeat. He said the gates of hell shall never whip it. It's going to whip everything else. Hey, you young people will see everything else around you in the next 10 years shook up and whipped. But the church will still be singing and a preaching and a teaching. You stay with your church. You stay with your church. You stay with your Lord. Stay in the boat. Stay in the boat. Stay in the boat. When the storm is over, they're still in the boat. When the storm comes, He said, pull on the other side, boys. We're going on the other side. To you it's rough, but it ain't going to be long so He's going to pull us on the other side. See, these little ships was some more little churches. He built His church, and out of that church came these little churches. And whether your church is little or big, if He's in there, stay with Him. You may say, well, my church is just a little church. He said, there's some little ships. But when they got the storm through, He said, pull on the other side. And Jesus carried these ships on the other side. He established His church, and out of those churches have come other little churches all over this nation, all over this world. You say, well, preacher, you don't have no proof that churches have always been here. I don't have to have it. Jesus said it'd be here. Well, we went through the Dark Ages and the Renaissance and Revolution. You didn't have no church history. Well, before all that happened, bees was a swarming, forming a hive, making honey and hatching out a queen and hatching out some more bees and starting another hive and swarming. And they've been doing that for all these years before the Dark Ages and after the Dark Ages and through the Dark Ages, making honey. But you don't have no history of it. And so as a result, they're making honey before and hatching out bees and forming hives and starting another hive and making honey and feeding bees and hatching out and getting the queen and starting again. So since you don't have no history in the Dark Ages, I guess tumblebugs made the honey back in the Dark Ages. Well, you can have tumblebug honey if you want it. I don't want it. If I'm going to have honey, I want the real stuff. And Jesus said the gates of hell would never prevail against His church. She's come through the Dark Ages. She's come through the Renaissance. She's come through the Revolution. And she's coming through modernism, liberalism, and all other isms. And she's coming for me and you. I know the storm's on. I know it's rough. But it ain't long now till Jesus is going to say, pull her in, boys. We're going on the other side. And we'll wind up on the other side. Wind up on the other side. The ones in the boat went on the other side with Jesus. And the little churches got on the other side with Jesus. Go with whatever crowd you want to, but I want to be in the boat that's going on the other side, where there's a river clears a Christian, where there's no death, where the streets of gold are, where there's no sorrow, where there's no sin, where there's no separation. Stay in the boat. She's going to pull in after a while. Don't get scared. Don't jump out. Stay in the boat. Stay in the boat. She'll pull in on the other side. Stay with her. Stay in there with the church. Love it. Give yourself for it. It's going to be caught up after a while, and we're going to sail right into glory and turn you loose where you'll never get shook up no more. Stay in the boat. Stay in the boat. Stay in the boat. God bless you for coming to Zion. And God keep in the boat till the time when He pulls us and say, we're going on the other side, disciples. And He went on the other side with them. He's going on the other side with us. Come in and say, Father, look here who I got. I acknowledge Him before you and before all angels. Then you talking about a shouting spree. You ain't never seen nothing yet. He's coming for us. The storm's on. But He'll calm it one of these days. And then He'll say, come on, we're going on the other side. And we'll pull in on the other side. Pull up the river as clear as a Christian. And unload around the thrones. Walk up and down the river and eat fruit off in the 12 different kind of trees. I'm going to stay in the boat, Yogans. Don't let nobody lead you away from your church. Sinful crowd nor religious crowd. Stay with your church. Stay in there where Jesus is. You won't lose. You'll win. God help you. God help you. We're going to stand.